All right, welcome back to NostalgiaCast. I'm Johnny Craddock,
And I'm Darren Lundberg.
and today we're going to be talking about Point Break, a 1991 film directed by Kathryn Deuce Bigelow, male gigolo, and
Wait,
starring,
wait, wait. Who? Who? Directed by who?
James Cameron's ex-husband.
Don't you mean ex-wife? Kathryn Bigelow, his ex-wife?
Well, I don't know. I just thought that, Point Break and Zero Dark 30 and The Hurt Locker were directed by a man.
Oh, I see. So what you're saying is like if it's manly, it has to be directed by a man, like a woman can't direct manly? That's
You're
what you're saying?
saying Catherine is a female's name? I thought it
Yes,
was like
Kathryn
Lynn or
Bigelow.
Kim or Tracy. Those can be male or female names.
Yeah, but Kathryn can't. Kathryn Bigelow. Yeah, yeah.
All right. I was way off.
Okay, you gonna do it right this time?
I'll do it right this time.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so welcome back to NostalgiaCast. I'm Johnny,
Now, Darren,
and today we're talking about Point Break, 1991 film directed by Kathryn Bigelow. She is a
right.
female. Uh,
An
James
Oscar-winning
Cameron's
female,
ex-wife.
right?
This movie stars Keanu Reeves, Patrick Swayze, Gary Busey, James LaGrosse, Lori Petty. Um,
John C. McGinley. I
yep,
like him.
he's in there. I also saw Anthony, what's his
Kiedis.
name?
Kiedis, Red Hot Chili
Yes, that's
Peppers.
right, Red Chili
Yeah, yeah,
Peppers.
yeah.
And then Tom Sizemore has a little cameo.
Uncredited. Like, was
Yeah,
Tom Sizemore? I didn't look it up. Was Tom Sizemore that big of an actor around this time that he could go uncredited and people go,
I
"Hey,
don't know,
that's
but
Tom
yeah, I
Sizemore."
looked for his name. I didn't see it.
Interesting. Yeah. But
Yeah,
yeah, when he shows up, I'm like, "That's Tom Sizemore," and he's awesome. He's great.
yeah. Well, anyway, Darren, this is a movie that again I grew up with. I wouldn't consider it like one of my favorite movies in the world, but I did always enjoy it. And whenever it was on, I would watch it. And I know my older brother liked it
Mm.
quite a bit, and we'd watch it with his friends whenever they'd come over. And yeah, I really liked the surfing sequences. I liked the skydiving sequences. I was always impressed with what they were able to do, with the camera, in the air like that. I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
I just really liked it. And we can talk about this a little bit. I know we usually save the acting towards the end, but we'll get into it probably first here. But first of
Mm.
all, my experience, I can't remember the first time, but all I know is I always really enjoyed it. But what about you? Can you remember your first time with this movie?
Yeah, again, this is the 90s, and I would go for summers, like I said before, to visit my family in New York. And so this is just one of the movies that was out. And so we went to go. I think this came out maybe the week after Terminator 2, something like that, a couple weeks after. So we went to go see this in the theater. Although instead of it being my grandpa that took me, it was my Auntie Susan took me. So I don't really recall any specific memories other than the part where Pappas and Utah are trying to ambush the surfers at the end and Pappas is hiding and he gets shot. And then there's a part where because Johnny needs to find out where what is her name Tyler is, right? So he's
Right.
blocking Swayze from he's blocking Bodie from Pappas shooting him, and then you see the other guy pick up the shotgun and he shoots Pappas dead. When that was happening, my aunt threw up her hands. She's like, "Oh, this is so stupid, so stupid. Why'd you let that? This movie's stupid. I hate this movie." Like out loud in the theater. It's like, "Oh, okay, that's a strong reaction to a Surfer Dude movie." But yeah, that's my one strong memory about this. My aunt freaking out that the movie had made such a dumb, idiot decision at the end.
That's funny.
Yeah,
Oh man. One thing that I was related to with this movie was again, the main character's name is Johnny
yeah.
and his last name is Utah.
And you're
My
from
name's
Utah,
Johnny. I'm from Utah. And
right?
so I had a job once, and then on the first day, I told my people that I worked with, my name is Johnny, and they were like, "Oh, you're like Johnny Utah from Point Break," and so that kind of stuck for the time that I was there. I was
Yeah,
known as Johnny Utah. So there's that.
that makes
Um,
sense.
anyway, so real quick, let's go into the acting because I know during our Bill and Ted's episode we talked about Keanu Reeves, we talked about um, some of his best slash
Yeah.
worst performances. But where do you think this performance ranks on that list? Did we even rank it? Was it even on our list? I don't remember.
I don't think this was brought up. Now, the interesting thought that I've always had about Point Break, again, when we were trying to map out the movies that we were doing, your first choice, I believe, was Hamlet with Mel Gibson, right? But then we did Dead Again. I guess we kind of felt like it was repetitive, like we'd already talked Shakespeare, so why? And plus, Hamlet with Mel Gibson is kind of a dull. So I would enjoy talking about the performances, but I think it would be a really short episode because there's nothing really new that it adds to that. I think that's what we decided. So again, when we were trying to map it out, you mentioned, well, let's do Point Break instead. And the first thought that I had was that's interesting because I know Keanu, this was his first action movie. I know Bigelow really was dead set on having him. Like, if we can't get Keanu Reeves, then we don't have a movie, right?
Okay.
But even though this is his first action movie, and he's very tough, he's very buff, and he's got a good action star stance, especially that training sequence in the beginning when he gives the thumbs up, that kind of thing. He looks like an action star. But I don't officially count him as an action star until Speed. And I think that has to do with his performance. Like, again, when we talked about in Bill and Ted's, I don't want to denigrate Keanu because I love him as a person. I love him as for what he tries. He pushes himself. He's not just comfortable doing one thing. He'll always try something different. I think that always needs to be mentioned. So even though he did, I think he worked out with actual FBI agents. He worked with UCLA quarterback coaches, former coach Rick Neuheisel. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. But he actually worked to make his football stance, the way he threw a football, look realistic and look like he knew what he was doing. Now, that's the kind of commitment that we've come to expect from Reeves, but I love that even back here, he didn't want to look like an idiot. He took his craft very, very seriously, but for some reason, it just doesn't click for me. Well, I mean, what do you think about that? What do you think about Keanu in here?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've always appreciated about him. I know he's very dedicated and he really gets into his roles, and I
Dedicated. That's
appreciate
good.
that.
Yeah.
I also know that none of these actors really were surfers, and so they had to learn how to surf,
Yeah.
and or get stunt doubles.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, we talked about his performances, and I didn't really even think about this one. I know we talked about Bill and Ted's maybe being one of his best ones because he's a different character in that
That's
movie
this
completely.
defining role,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah. I
defining role.
mean, and then also I liked Matrix. I know it's kind of we talked about maybe being a kind of a stale performance, but it fits the role so well. It's so perfect. He is Neo,
Yeah.
and
He's
Neo's a
stoic.
character.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he fits it. Yeah.
and I think he nails it. But anyway, and then also we talked about I think we talked about Much Ado About Nothing. How about that? That was
Oh,
the one of our
yeah.
favorites, obviously. But after watching this, I was like, you know what? He's not terrible in this. Like he maybe not the best, but he's not terrible. And I can appreciate what he was trying to do, you know?
Right, right. Well, my thing is, so again, we could just do a whole episode of like making fun of his line delivery, right? I think the thing is, Bill and Ted defined him so much that we hear it in Bram Stoker's Dracula. We hear it in his voice. We hear it in Much Ado About Nothing. He can't really shake it. In Speed, he really shook it. Like, I don't feel any of the surfer dude in
That's the other one I
Speed.
was going to say was the speed role. I like him in Speed a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Again, he's John Wick. Obviously, he's very great. Like, something's got to give with Jack Nicholson, and it's not a great movie, but I think Keanu has a very good presence in that. He's a character that oh yeah, anybody could fall in love with him. Diane Keaton could fall in
And you
love with
like
him.
him in Parenthood too, right?
Oh, again, that's Bill and Ted, right? Him in Parenthood is his role in Bill and Ted, but he has a conversation with Diane Wieston there where he talks to the River Phoenix character,
Yeah.
right? Or the Joaquin Phoenix character. I mix up the Phoenixes. Anyway, so he's talking, and then he's messed up. He's doing all these things. It's like, my dad used to flick cigarettes at me to wake me up. It's like, you have to have a license to fish. You have to have a license to drive, but they'll let any bloomin' asshole be a father, right? And then he shakes himself out of it. But it's like there's an awareness to his performance in that movie, right? And so, yeah, I love him in that, but he's taking his Ted role and he's giving it a little more nuance instead of it just being comedy. So that's again, he's got shades, right? So that's one of the things that I like about those performances.
Yeah. I mean, there were definitely moments throughout the film where I think he fell short. There were several line deliveries like we talked about that just did not come out right. And that
Yeah,
and that seems to be the case with him. Sometimes he just can't deliver a line and sometimes he just nails it. So it's kind of like you kind of get, good and bad with Keanu.
right. Well, some of the things like when he says, I am an F FBI agent. I wrote down, no, you're not. I don't buy him as it, just the way he delivers it. I don't buy it, right?
Yeah.
Um, the thing that I think he gets right is when he realized. Oh, before I mention that, there's another scene. The camera work is really, really busy. Like we'll come back to. I want to talk about the way that the camera moves a little bit when we talk about the action sequences, but some of the first camera moves, it's so the camera is moving so smoothly and so swiftly. There's an energy to it, but there's a part where after Johnny has gotten Pappas to tell him his theory that they're surfers, right? And they're both sitting in the FBI office and they're nursing beers and stuff like that, and he kind of makes fun of him like, oh, he's gets wax on his mustache, cleans it off with a shoe, that kind of thing. The camera's moving around, it's very restless, but then Keanu's also, he's doing this constantly, and so it's adding more energy to that already energetic shot, and it was like it was pulling me out. I was like, this is
Mm.
too much. There's
Okay.
too much nervous energy. I don't feel it. I don't feel like he's making like he's kind of poking fun at Pappas, right? But I don't buy him as somebody who could be making fun of him because he's so restless and he's like jittery. And I'm like, I don't buy you as somebody that could have a leg up on anybody, right? So there's that. And so it's really weird. I think his best acting is when he realizes he can get to Tyler by, they bond over their dead parents, right? And he's in the surf shop and he's finally getting to her. And the way he's talking about, like, I went to law school and all this stuff. And he explains that whole story. I buy him in that. I buy what, because I get that he's actually put the story through his head and that he's using it to get to her. And I really liked him in that part. But when he's yelling, I am an FBI agent, I don't buy him in that. I don't know
Yeah.
why. But anything that he does in Speed, I buy from the get-go, like without question.
Yeah, I think there's a thought process behind his character in Speed, and you don't have that in this movie. And what I will say too is the connection between the other actors on the screen too, like Gary Busey and even Patrick Swayze, even though they're good in their roles, I feel like there's no connection between the characters on the screen. Like the
Yeah.
actors are they're just saying their lines, they're just yelling their next line because that's what the script says to do. Instead of actually feeling it or having any kind of subtext behind it,
Yeah.
it's just kind of like, and so you don't really get the connection that you're looking for
Right. It's
in the characters.
hitting beats instead of happening organically.
Yeah.
We might as well talk about, we're jumping a little. Let's talk about Lori Petty next. I wanted to mention there's the scene
Okay.
where it's almost immediate. Like Johnny's fine. He's chased after the ex-presidents after he doesn't, they don't 100% commit to he knows that it's Bodie, and they don't commit that Bodie knows that that's John. They don't commit to that, but he feels like he needs to tell Tyler that he's an FBI agent. And she's like, no, 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 don't tell me now. Tell me later. Then
Mhm.
there's one scene, and then there's another scene. I swear it's like two scenes later where you see, because we have the scene where Bodie's like, I can handle him, and then it cuts to the room and you see the shadow with the gun approach, right? But it's actually Tyler. She throws his badge at him. She's yells at him about how, yeah, I bet you even lied about your parents, did you? And I don't feel like that happened organically at all. I just felt like this is the next thing we need to do to get to the next point. So let's just
Yeah.
have her do that. And she does it, but I don't feel that, I don't feel that moment. I don't feel that they had a bond that was past the physical at that point.
Yeah. I was waiting for that scene as soon as he lied to her. I was like,
Yeah.
later on, she's gonna find out. She's gonna yell at him. It's gonna be this big whole, fight scene, this breakup scene. So it was kind of like it was just there because it had to be there. It was like I say, it was the
There's
next beat in the story.
there's no suspense, there's no buildup. It just
Yeah.
happens because they need to get it out there.
But the romantic side of her character and Keanu Reeves' character, I think she actually I think holds it together. I think she does. I like her in this more than I like her in other movies she's done. I like her in A League of Their Own. I hate her in Tank Girl. But
Yeah.
I mean I actually like her in this one. I think she looks great as a dark haired. I don't think she looks that great as a redhead, but I
Lori
like her with this color hair and everything.
Yeah,
Makes her
Lori
eyes pop.
Petty, she's always an offbeat actress. Like she's got the looks of somebody who could be traditional Hollywood gorgeous, right? But she's very quirky. Like she's kind of off. Like she's not, I don't want to, this sounds denigrating. She's not normal. Like there's just something different about her. She's never, I think A League of Their Own is her most maybe normal part. And even though she's great in that, I think, and you're right, like Tank Girl's like the other extreme. So you have either the wholesome or the Tank Girl. part. But I
Mhm.
think like as Tyler, I don't have a problem with her. She's got great eyes, like she's got a
Yeah.
great look. She's physically, she's great to look at, and you could tell why somebody would find her attractive. All that stuff. I like that she's when they're all talking about the the Australian beach or whatever. I think that's when they talk about it, where they're all gathered around. It's like I'm going to go there. It's every 50 years or the 50th year or something like that. And she says, "Oh, there's too much testosterone around here." I buy that she's part of that world, but not a part of it. But
Okay.
again, I think she mixes the traditional romantic lead with the quirky kind of takes no prisoners kind of character role. It's a nice mix for her.
Yeah. I like her in this one. Patrick Swayze.
The
I know.
Swayze. We have to
Yeah.
give that shout out to our friend Phoenix.
I know we like Swayze.
Yeah.
I like him in this too. I think he's great. And I kept, as I was watching it, I just kept imagining him in Total Recall. I was like, man, why is he not
Yeah.
in Recall?
Yeah.
He'd
That's
been
kind of
great in Total
unfortunate.
Recall.
I brought that up and now I can't unsee it. You know what I
I
mean? I
know.
think it would have been great. Um, Partway through the movie, it's after the part again, I like I don't know. I think the best character in the movie is Bodhi's character because he's interesting. And I think it's just because Patrick Swayze has this inner cool that it just radiates from him, right? Like the first time he meets Johnny, like there's a uncomfortableness because Johnny's with Tyler, obviously, and they've been so there's an uncomfortableness. They have the football scene. You see Johnny chasing down Bodhi, which gets a nice callback later during the ex-president chase scene. But he chases them down like they go on the surf, and there's this hostility between them, and you think they're going to go come to blows. The other ex-presidents, the other surfers come up and they're yelling at him, and then Bodhi tells him to calm down. Right? He's like, "No, you got to. This is. Don't you know who this is? This is Johnny Utah, like star quarterback." And so he's the epitome of cool. And then later when Johnny's being attacked by Anthony Kiedis and his gang or whatever, and then Bodhi shows up and he's again he knows these guys. He's using the kind of the Bruce Lee or the Jackie Chan technique of basically the Zen technique of not physically assaulting them, but touching them in a way that prevents them from being physical. You know what I mean? He has
Yeah.
that cool Zen and he's like, don't do this, man. I'm not kidding you. Like, back off. He's with me. Right. And then they walk off, whatever, keep walking. And I turned to Elizabeth and I'm like, Swayze should still be here. Like, why don't it's unfair that Patrick Swayze was taken from us because he's just a cool cucumber. I don't know if that makes sense. I just like watching him. Even in Ghost, he's not the best actor in Ghost, which we talked about, but I like the persona and the presence that he exudes.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with that. He has a presence for sure. He's just super talented. Like everything he does, he can dance, he can sing, he can like act. He's ripped. He's in great shape.
Right, right.
He can surf, he can skydive.
Yeah, I think he said that this is his closest to himself. I'm like, I hope that's not completely right. Like, I hope you're not so much of an adrenaline junkie
He
that
even
you put
does
people's
ballet
lives
in
into.
the air. And that
Yeah,
scene
that's
where
right.
he's like doing ballet in
Well,
the
what I thought was funny is that, and this is an interesting kind of idea today, is like he was an experienced skydiver when they first started. So he would have had no problems doing that. But because he was signed on, insurance companies could not sign off on him doing all his own stunts, right? And doing those jumps. I think he did something like 53 practice jumps or something like that. But he was promised kind of to sweeten the deal that they would get one shot of him in the movie of him actual skydiving. And that's the Adios Amigo shot where you see him fall out, which is cool because I think in the behind the scenes stuff, the producers are like, you expect there to be a cut or to swing around and reveal a stunt performer, but no, he jumps out of that plane and the camera looks at him
yeah,
falling, so there's no faking it, right?
yeah.
But I thought it was funny, number one, that even though he was tied to the insurance stuff, when they weren't shooting like on weekends, he would go to the airport with some friends and they would actually go skydiving, even though he wasn't supposed to. But
That's fine.
isn't it interesting too that nowadays you see Tom Cruise literally skydiving, you see Tom Cruise scaling the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building, you see him hanging onto the side of planes, and I want your opinion on this. Why does Tom Cruise get away with that, but Patrick Swayze can? Is it because Cruise is a producer? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, maybe because he's the money too. Maybe that's why. And plus he's not that he's any better than Swayze. I just think he's Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Maybe he's got more clout for some reason.
You just let him do that. I just
Yeah.
think it's interesting the way that the world works. They wouldn't let they would only shoot Patrick Swayze for one shot, but they let Tom Cruise like what 170 dives
Yeah.
for Mission Impossible Fallout.
Well,
So
since we're
yeah,
talking about the action, Let's
Well,
talk
you
about
want
that.
to talk about Gary Busey first, speaking of action? I
Oh
don't
yeah, yeah,
want
yeah. Let's do that. Let's do that.
to. And we got to talk about John C. McGinley too. Just those two
Okay.
guys. I got
Okay.
to mention them. So where do you stand on Gary
Well,
Busey as an actor,
I mean, I
period?
like him as an actor, but for some reason, I felt again like I felt like he was just shouting his lines the whole time. He was just playing the buddy cop role, and he was just doing I didn't feel like there's really any character development there. It was just Gary Busey shouting lines. That's how I felt.
Yeah. He's the Gary Busey part. I wrote down it's funny that there was a time when Gary Busey was sane. Because you see him in the interviews behind the scenes stuff, and he's just his same kooky self. He doesn't really make sense. Like of what I don't know what you're talking about. Like put together a cohesive sentence. Can you do that for me, please? But you like him. Like he's got a lot of funny lines. We mentioned the part where Johnny Utah's being beat up, and then obviously Papa sees him and he runs and quick thinking. Right? He's like, "Have you guys seen a kid with a stereo?" Right? I like his
Yeah.
quick thinking.
Yeah.
I like when he punches out McGinley, like there's one thing you don't have, it's respect for your elders, that kind of stuff. I just thought it was funny too, since we're talking about Speed, that there's some similarities between this and Speed, right? You've got Keanu, there's literally a part like he's got the mentor, like the older mentor, the older, wiser mentor. Like in Speed, it's Jeff Daniels, and here it's Gary Busey. There's a part in Speed where they're on the elevator, and what's his name? Harry is quizzing Jack, right? And there's a hostage on a whatever on a plane, and Keanu or Jack Traven keeps like saying these, will the mystery guest please sign in, right? And Harry's like, what? Like he doesn't understand. Like, why are you doing one-liners? Like this isn't a movie. It seems like I think we talked about that in the episode. But there's a part where again, Johnny is getting Pappas to reveal to him what his theory is. And Pappas goes, you want to kill the bad guys and become a hero? And Johnny goes, definitely. And Pappas goes, definitely. Like he's making fun of his voice, right? So there's that similarity. But then also the girlfriend gets kidnapped. And Johnny literally has a line to Bodhi saying, just let her go and I'll walk, right? And in Speed, it's like, you have your money, just let her go and walk. So there's a lot of interesting kind of similarities I thought were funny. Did you
Yeah.
notice any of those?
I did notice that. I mean, maybe not to the point where I was like, writing things down, taking notes
Right,
or
right.
anything, but I did go, oh, that's kind of like Speed.
Yeah.
Hey, what about McGinley?
Well, McGinley, I know from Scrubs. Are you a Scrubs fan? Did you ever watch that show?
A few episodes here and there, yeah.
Where he was the scene stealer in that. Dr. Cox was a favorite character because he's my favorite type of character where he's gruff and he says what he means and he doesn't take any prisoners. He doesn't care, but he also cares, right? You can't get past the fact that he cares about things. He cares about patients, cares about the people he works with, cares about JD in that show. At the end of the show, it turns out that, yeah, they really do like each other and that comes out in a funny way. But here, I don't know. He's really just what are the note I have? The part where he's yelling at him. Does anybody have something even remotely interesting to tell me? And I wrote down, wow, he even rolls up his sleeves like an asshole. Just I don't know. He's the guy that yells. He's the typical captain who just shows up and yells at everybody. He's an a-hole from the start. He's an a-hole at the end. I don't know if he has any super funny lines. You know what I mean? But I don't know. What do you think of McGinley?
Well, when he first was on screen, I was kind of like, okay, this is that character. You know what I mean? I was just kind of like, I was on board with it, and it was fine. I think he fits the character,
Yeah.
and I think it was fine. But as the movie went on, and the more I saw of him, the more I didn't want to see him. I was like, okay, I'm done with that guy.
He's
Let's
just
just,
shouty McShout face
yeah,
is all that
yeah.
he's.
I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
done with that character a long time ago.
Right, right, right.
But not that he did a bad job, but he wasn't great either. He was decent.
Yeah,
Okay, so the action. I
right.
mean, it, I think overall it's a fun movie. It's very action packed. Like we talked about, the acting, some of the conversations don't really jive. It just seems like they're just shouting lines at each other. But then when there's these big moments when they're on their surfboards and they're catching the wave or they're jumping out of airplanes or the robbing banks, all that kind of stuff is like super entertaining and really fun to watch. Um, but um, I don't know. I'm not sure where I'm going with this.
Well, okay. So the thing that I noticed on this watch, again, I know that I saw it that first time with my aunt. I remember that. I've seen it a couple, I think I bought it on VHS when it first came out, but then I didn't watch it. So I think I sold the VHS away because it wasn't getting any play on the VCR or on the TV. So I know I've seen it at least two, three times since that first showing in 1991. And so when I put it in this time, I was like, okay, because I know people love this movie. I know that a lot of people have affection for this movie, the Zen part of it, the Swayze part of it. Keanu's obviously there's a resurgence because of everything. So I was like, well, why do people love this so much? And I don't want to be Johnny, I never want to be the guy that shows up and just makes fun of the thing that somebody likes because people are going to like things for different reasons, right? I don't want to do that. I would rather have a conversation about things than poking fun at stuff.
Okay.
But the thing that I noticed this time is when the action is going, it's great. Like it's very visceral. It's more of like you feel it more than anything, right? It's an in your bones kind of feel. When they're surfing, obviously it's shot by Donald Peterman, who also did Flashdance, who did Splash, who did Star Trek 4. He would later do Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Get Shorty, Men in Black. So he's a very good cinematographer. And yeah, the cinematography in this is gorgeous. Like when they're surfing, there's a way that they're shot kind of at dusk, and it's gorgeous. The way that it captures the waves, and again, you feel like you're out there on the surf, right?
Yeah.
And that's hard. You feel when they go under. You feel when they're gulping for air, when they're drowning almost. So you feel all that when they're skydiving, which is funny. The skydiving comes in pretty late. I know that they talk about it before, but by the time, and I guess they're doing it for the suspense because by then we know that Johnny knows, and then we know that Bodhi knows. It's like, or do they trust each other enough to be up skydiving? But the footage is gorgeous. Like I know that that's not, it's obviously not Swayze in a lot of the shots, and I think for like the shot behind me when they're doing stuff just on they had them on special like poles that were wrapped around their bodies, and then they would fit their clothes around it, and so they
Okay.
just kept it out of shot, so you know that's not them, and then they would have gale force winds blowing in their faces or whatever. But yeah, the skydiving sequences are just gorgeous, and the action sequences, I know that Bigelow shot on something called a pogo stick where they put a camera on a stick and they just follow people around, and the effect that that has, especially during that chase when Bodhi's being chased in his Ronald Reagan mask, right? And and Johnny's chasing after him. But the way that the camera jumps over fences, the way that it dives through windows or dives in doors, there's literally a part where Bodhi throws a pit bull at Johnny, and it's just like, oh crap. And when they're finally chasing down on that ravine and you see Bodhi make it and he runs off and then Johnny slides down and he hurts his bum knee and you can feel the pain right there. He's like, no, he's yelling like, no, 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 like, oh no, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So all of that stuff, the note that I had, like I said, I had this is very visceral. This is a feel it movie, right? You feel everything here. And that's the positive thing that I love about this movie. The stuff in between is so stupid. Like I don't the bank robbery stuff, I don't buy that. I don't know why I know that James Cameron helped. They did an uncredited rewrite and he wrote the script with Bigelow after Peter Iliff or whatever had turned in his draft and stuff like that. So I know that Cameron invented the X Pres, and again, it's a very iconic image. Like you remember it. Like I don't know what point that has. Like like you said, I don't feel any of the relationships past the part where the screenplay tells me I need to feel the relationships, right? I mean,
Right.
what do you
Right.
think about that?
Yeah, I agree with that completely. One thing I want to say real quick is when you look up, when you search up a Google search and you say uh, surfer movies, this movie pops up. When you search up skydiving movies, this movie pops up. When you search bank robbing movies, this movie pops up. But it's like it's
Yes,
the only one that has, it pops up for everything.
right,
Not just it's not just a stripper movie, it's not just a skydiving movie, it's not just a bank robbery. It's all three of them. And
right,
I think what it has going for is it combines all these different elements into one cohesive thing, I think.
right. Well, it's about the thrill seeking, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what the movie's about. Like
exactly.
Johnny loses himself in surfing or in skydiving. He feels something else to the point where he tells Bodhi when they're on the beach in Australia, like I surf every day, right? I feel it's part of my bones now.
Yeah. Are you a thrill seeker? Have you done any of this kind of stuff?
Well, last week I did try that new blackberry Dr. Pepper.
Oh,
So
that's
I thought
dangerous.
that was adventurous. Or sometimes I come up with a new monster drink that I try and I don't like, stuff like that. No, seriously, I'm not. We talked about it before. Since I was raised by a single mom, my mom was working. And so we never went on roller coasters. We never went to theme parks. We never skydived, right? We never went to races, anything like that. It was just she was working, which again, I don't want to falter for that. That's just how it was. And I never even learned how to swim. To this day, I don't know how to swim. And that's because my mom didn't know how to swim. And so she just never took me out swimming, right?
Yeah.
Living in Utah, we're nowhere near a beach. So that was never so thrill seeking. Like I get nervous on roller coasters, right? I'm a little better now. Like I remember when we were in our senior year in high school, there was a lagoon day and I hated all those rides. But now like I don't mind any of those. But it's like, yeah, other than that, I think I said that I don't know how to swim, but in Midway here in Utah, we went to something called Homestead Crater where they had like the deepest, like I think the one of the in the state at least, one of the deepest pits or the deepest like pools.
Okay.
And I did. I put on my life vest and I went out there and I was in the water with the family. I mean, I was terrified in the water, but it's something that I felt like you had to do. So I've done that. I don't know if that
Hey, you
counts.
faced your fear, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's awesome.
Was there any, do you remember any other times that I was on the I know you like bringing this up a lot.
I do. We talked about it in our Frighteners episode. Yeah, there was an experience where you had to get on a tube in the middle of Utah Lake, and you were
Yep.
just terrified, man. I'd never seen fear like that in somebody's eyes before, and it cracked me up. I was laughing my head off at you because it was so funny. Because I didn't understand how you could be so afraid of getting on a tube. You know what I mean? It was like, why are you so afraid of this? But anyway, it was really funny.
I was more afraid of your brother like whipping me off of the tube and then
Yeah.
not coming back for me. That's what I was terrified of.
Yeah. The only thing that I've done close to like thrill seeking is I cliff jumped once. I went to Battle Mountain, Nevada, and there was this, gorge and this big 30-foot cliff, and you couldn't see over it. And you had to like run really fast to jump over the cliff and make sure you didn't hit the rocks on the way down.
Yeah.
And you had to kind of just run and go. And so I did it, and it was terrifying. But after you do it, it was kind of like, oh, that wasn't so bad. And actually, it's kind of fun, and you get that adrenaline rush. So I can understand why people get this way, why they're willing to jump out of airplanes and willing to like bungee jump and all that kind of stuff. I would never do it, but I understand the feeling that you get because of it. You know what I mean? It's definitely a rush.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I like I said, I don't mean to denigrate people's feelings about this. I just for it's odd. I don't know why I don't consider Keanu Reeves an action star in this. Like it does he just doesn't quite get there. I know that he's trying, but at the end of the day, I don't know. Do you feel like the movie commits to any of its themes? Like I'm looking at my notes for the final bit, and the note that I have here, I'm not sure. Maybe you can explain it to me. I'm not sure what the final motivations to the characters are. I don't know why Bodhi decides to bring Johnny along for the bank heist. I don't know why Bodhi breaks his rules by sending the boys into the vault. I don't know why Bodhi decides to take Johnny onto that plane. I don't know what's accomplished by Johnny jumping after Bodhi other than to get him to free Tyler. I don't understand why Bodhi discards Roach's body. Like he's so like when his friends get hurt, like he feels it, like you can feel it that it hurts him that he's gone this far. But Roach, when he finds him on the side of on the ground after parachuting dead, they don't even pay like we were gonna bury him. No, we got to keep moving, right? He just discards him, right? And I don't understand what the point of it just feels like Johnny finally gets his man. He goes and confronts Bodhi on Bell's Beach, right? And then you have that fight, which is it just seems like, oh, we're doing this now. Like they were having felt the movie was over, but we've got to add one more fist fight in. And then it turns out that Johnny has handcuffed him, which is cool. But then Bodhi turns it around. Like I don't know if there's any character development. He's like, just let me go out there, man. Just the one wave and I'll come back. And then Dan hooks, and then the guys with the fake Australian accents, the cops with the fake Australian accents come out and they yell at him or whatever, and then he throws his badge away. I'm not sure what any of that accomplishes. It doesn't feel like anything's accomplished in this
Yeah,
movie.
I think that's a script problem. I don't know. I don't think it's an acting problem. I think it's a script problem. I don't think they really knew what was supposed to happen with these characters. They just kind of like they knew they wanted to make a surfing slash skydiving movie, and so that's what they did.
Right.
But I will say this: Ruth and I were watching it, and we talked about how we remembered it being where there was a closer bond between Johnny Utah and Bodie. We felt like,
Yeah.
where's that bond? Wasn't there a closer bond? Because it
Right.
kind of happened so quickly. It was like, oh, all of a sudden they're best friends, and all of a sudden, in our memories, it was like, well, I thought they got along better, or it was like a longer moment where they were able to develop this relationship, but they never really did. And all of a sudden, you're supposed to believe that they are going to go rob a bank together, and they're going to go, you know what I mean? All this stuff. It was kind of like, all right. And then that bond they supposed to have at the end, I still didn't believe it. I was like, he wants to arrest him, but yet he's still willing to let him go. It just was like, okay, I don't get it.
Right. Well, I like the kind of switch up, and I know it's just because Keanu had done and was doing a different movie and had grown out his hair. I know that Swayze was doing a different movie and had cut his hair. I like that they switch at the end, and Johnny now has the long hair, and Bodhi doesn't. He has a short cropped cut. So I liked all that, but it's like I don't know. When it just seems to me when you make a movie that's more zen, like you're just supposed to feel it. You're not supposed to like understand it, that kind of thing. I'm fine to a point, but I do need some kind of connection at the end. It just can't be all feels, right?
Yeah.
And even like I said, the scene where Bodhi, I guess he's just frustrated or he's trying to prove a point where he tells his boys to go into the vault and they react in a way that you can tell this is a change, this is a shift, and they don't understand it, right? And I feel that again viscerally. I feel it viscerally, even though I don't understand what the point of it is. I feel that it means something. That makes sense. Again, the thing I want to mention, we mentioned Donald Peterman, but I do want to mention Bigelow as a director. I think so when you have directors like Kathy Yan or you have directors like Patty Jenkins that try to do comic book movies that try or Mimi Leader who tried to do the Peacemaker stuff like that after doing ER. When you have these female directors that try to do action, you get a lot of pushback from the film bros that are like, a woman, girl, what do you think you're doing trying to be a man's world? You're obviously not as good. And so Yan and Jenkins especially kind of get the short shrift, even though I think they do a good job with like Wonder Woman and Birds of Prey. I just think that for some reason guys dude bros have it in for these female directors and they just want to the misogynists in them just wants to make fun of them, but Bigelow never gets that. We talked about Hurt Locker, we've talked about mentioned Zero Dark 30, Near Dark, right? Blue Steel with Jamie Lee Curtis, Strange Days, which I think might actually be her
Yeah.
best movie.
Mm.
She's very, very heavy on the testosterone. So just like we joked about in the intro, yeah, it feels very manly. I think Bigelow has a way of doing that. I don't know if it's the James Cameron influence, so that's why they were attracted to each other. She has a way of directing this very testosterone heavy so that the dude bros don't have anything to complain about. And I know that Hurt Locker is probably her most acclaimed one, but once you've seen one war movie, especially if you start with All Quiet on the Western Front, which Hurt Locker is just a copy of that. Like I watched the Hurt Locker enjoying the performances, but like I felt like I'd seen this before. When the Jeremy Renner character goes back home and he can't fit in, I'm like, I feel like I've seen this before, like multiple times, like by now. And so that I think Zero Dark 30 is a better movie because it goes places and is dark and it makes decisions that get you frustrated and get you involved. I don't know. I really like
Yeah.
hers. Whenever she directs, I'm interested in what she's doing. I think she does a good job, whether or not the movie lands completely or not.
Yeah, I think I mean, I think she does a good job with action. I think she's a good action director.
Yeah.
I was bored as heck during the Hurt Locker. Like it bored the crap out of me. But like you, Zero Dark 30, I was on the edge of my seat the entire time.
Yeah.
But I was into that story. I wanted to know how they got Bin Laden. You know what I mean? That was important to me. So like that's why it
Yeah.
I responded to that one. But anyway, when I saw Zero Dark 30, I was alone in the theater. It was like 11 o'clock showing or something like that. And so I
Oh
sat
no.
by myself. And when I walked out of the movie theater, it was like 1:30 in the morning. And like no one was in the mall. And I like went down the escalator and all these weird sounds kept like coming out of nowhere. And I was like freaking myself out, thinking someone was like gonna have a sniper rifle on me or something. And I'm like panicking. Anyway, it was kind of terrifying because I just watched the movie. But I think that has to do with the fact that she's a good director and she was able to create that kind of emotion in me throughout the movie. So I was still kind of feeling it as I was walking out of the movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
I
anyway,
think with Point Break, again, another note that I've just found the note is I feel like some of the dialogue scenes have the same kind of energy. Like I talked about at the beginning, like when Johnny Utah, when I keep saying his whole name, like you can't just call him Johnny or Utah, you have to say Johnny Utah, right? For some reason. But when you see him on the training course and it's the quick shots intermixed with the surfing, I think that's very visceral and it gets you involved. When Johnny Utah first walks in the FBI office, right? And he's got I don't want to call him McGinley. What's his name? Ben Harp,
John's,
right?
oh yeah,
He's walking around giving and the camera is doing this elaborate wonder, this elaborate tracking shot that's like panning and zipping around and going around desks and it gives it such a great energy. And I love that beginning. It gets you involved and it matches kind of the dialogue. But then later, like some of the dialogue scenes have that same kind of movement, like I mentioned with Keanu Reeves moving around. I'm like, if you do that for the dialogue scenes, the action scenes have less impact because there's a no tonal dissonance, right? There's a difference. And so when an action scene kicks up, you can tell there's something different. When you do your dialogue scenes with the same energy, it just feels exhausting at the end of the day. So that's the
Yeah.
one flaw with this. But if you compare this to what Paul Greengrass did with the two Bourne movies that I consider the good ones, the ones that he directed, you do have Supremacy and Ultimatum. The dialogue scenes, especially in Ultimatum, are shot with the same energy and the same quick cutting as the action scenes. But I think in Ultimatum it works because there's actual intrigue to what the characters are talking about. Like they're trying to uncover each other's secrets. And so in a way that has the same impact as the action scenes. In this, you have a bunch of Zen stuff. You have a bunch of masculine posturing, stuff like that. I don't think it suits because the dialogue stuff is nonsense. That, like I was saying, everything in between the action scenes is just nonsense to me. I don't care. Just get to the next action scene
Yeah.
to the point where even though I thought it was weird that they skydive, they have the bank robbery scene, and then they skydive again. I was like, oh, that's a little too close, but I didn't mind because I was like, yeah, stop talking. Like, just get out there and do the action. So I just think, does that make sense? I just
Yeah.
think there's a difference in the dialogue with the Bourne movies because it's about spies and secrets. To this, where it's just Zen nonsense and feeling the waves. I just don't buy, I don't feel like the energy of the camera work matches the dialogue of what's being said between the characters.
Yeah, I would agree with that. One thing I did notice throughout the movie, it kind of made me laugh when I heard Keanu Reeves say he went to Patrick's Roadhouse.
Yes. I was just looking at that. I was like, if Johnny doesn't
Did
mention
he
this, I
just say
will.
that? That was
Yeah,
awesome.
I thought that was very funny. Right.
And then, of course, the fight scene at the end is, an homage to Roadhouse because the big
Right.
fight scene at the end of Roadhouse. So that's why
Right.
that's there, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anything
Okay.
else?
Well, I'm looking at my notes. I think we basically covered everything. Oh, I guess the only last thing is, did you like the music score? It's Mark. I hope I'm right, Isham or Isham. Well, I don't know. I'll tell you what. What do you think of the music
I
score?
don't think I noticed it that much. I don't think it stood out as much as maybe it should have.
The where Johnny is jumps after Bodhi without the parachute. Again, great kind of Moonraker-esque kind of skydiving stuff. The music that plays during that is so direct to video-ish. Like it feels like it was just thrown out on a synthesizer. It doesn't feel like any thought process was behind it. It just felt cheap. I
Hmm.
don't know, like the whole last half of the action score to the point where they have a rat song like over the end credits. I was
I was
like,
going to mention the rat song.
it's not, this is nothing. Like why this is not hitting it. It feels, I hate when people say this, but it does feel very 90s, feels almost 80s-ish in a way. And I don't know. I just felt like the music score was the weakest part maybe of the whole movie.
Hmm. Like I say, it didn't stand out. So
Okay,
maybe
good.
maybe, maybe you're right.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think that's all I've got. I don't know. Good movie. I mean, it's once you surrender to it, once the action scenes kick in, you feel the broness when they're clasping hands like behind me, like whatever. Like that's great. Like
Yeah.
keep to that stuff. But there's no connective tissue, I think, that really sells it for me.
I just wanted more from the relationships. I wanted more from the acting and more from the script.
Yeah.
But the action delivers. So,
Right. Right. When Ebert in his review said it was an intelligently written movie, I was like, what movie were you watching, man? Because it wasn't this one. So
all right. So, what's next?
okay, so I believe we're finishing out 1991, and this is a movie that means a great deal to me, not so much for the movie, but for the music score, the Hans Zimmer music score. I want to talk Backdraft,
Okay.
directed by Ron Howard. We've talked about Ron Howard before multiple times, right? With How the Grinch Stole Christmas, with Willow, stuff like with Night Shift of all things. So
Yep.
it'll be interesting to talk about whether this is one of his better directed films or one of his lesser. But again, the music score just means so much to me from this movie. And this is one of those movies where I feel like Terminator 2, which also came out in 1991, where I don't have to watch the movie again. I pretty much got it memorized shot for shot. So let's
Yeah.
talk Backdraft. And we've got a special guest. It's somebody that I've always wanted to have on. And so I'm really excited to talk with them.
That sounds great.
All right.
Okay. Then for NostalgiaCast, I'm Johnny Craddock.
And I'm Darren Lundberg.
And I am an FBI agent.
I hate this, Johnny. I really do. I hate violence.
Vaya con Dios.
All right. We'll catch you next time.